All right, buckle up. Today on the deep dive, we're really plunging headfirst into a truly mind-bending set of principles. We're talking about ideas that suggest reality, as we know it, might be fundamentally different than we think, with a powerful focus on how our inner world, well, shapes everything we experience externally. Think of it as unlocking a new operating system, sort of, for understanding your life.
It's definitely a deep exploration. These are concepts that have been discussed for centuries, really, maybe most cohesively articulated in more recent times by figures like, say, Neville Goddard. But drawing on much older wisdom, the core of it really challenges our conventional view of cause and effect. It suggests the starting point for everything is, well, within us. Our mission today is to really unpack these potent ideas and, try to grasp their core message.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we even begin with something this big? It feels huge.
Well, the foundational principle, the place you really have to start, is the idea that consciousness isn't just something in reality. It is reality itself.
Whoa. Okay, that's a huge claim right there. What does that actually, mean in practice?
It means consciousness is presented not just as the observer, the thing looking out, but as the fundamental substance and the sole cause of everything that exists in your world. The teaching is essentially that your awareness, what you are conscious of, that determines your thoughts, and then your thoughts determine your experiences.
So if I'm not aware of it?
If you are simply not conscious of something right now, the idea is it doesn't exist for you in your reality. Our physical senses, sure, they make us aware of what seems external, yes. But the primary reality isn't the external world itself, according to this view. It's the consciousness that's doing the perceiving.
So it's not just that I'm unaware of something, so it doesn't affect me. It's like it literally doesn't exist in my reality unless I'm conscious of it. That completely flips everything on its head compared to the usual idea of, an objective world out there separate from me. Mm-hmm. What's the real takeaway then? Why think about reality this way?
The key insight, I think, is the absolute centrality of your own awareness. It suggests your individual consciousness isn't passive. It's the active ground from which your personal universe springs. It shifts the power dramatically inwards.
Okay. So if consciousness is the canvas,
yeah,
what's the paint?
Yeah.
How do things actually, show up on that canvas?
That leads directly to the next core principle, your imagination. It's seen as the fundamental creative force.
Imagination, not just like dreaming or making stuff up.
Absolutely, not just dreaming. Imagination is described as the very engine of creation, the equivalent of the divine force, but within you. The concept is that only things that can be imagined truly exist or can come into existence in your reality. If you literally can't imagine something being yours, it simply cannot appear for you. Conversely, if you can vividly imagine something as already belonging to you, already being real, then according to these principles, it becomes yours. It manifests. You aren't creating something out of thin air, exactly. You're bringing what's possible in consciousness into the physical world through the act of, imaginative perception. Your reality, your experiences, your actions, even how you perceive others and events, it's all shaped by your imagination.
Wow. Okay. So imagination is like the blueprint and the construction crew. That's a far cry from just idly daydreaming. And this ties into another really fascinating, almost unbelievable idea from these teachings.
Right.
That we can revise the past. How does that work?
It really flows from the same core idea. If imagination creates reality, and if time isn't this fixed, linear river we usually think it is, but maybe more fluid an illusion, as some philosophies suggest, then your past experiences were shaped by your state of consciousness and your imagination at that time.
Right, by what I believed or imagined then?
Exactly. So by changing your thoughts or beliefs about a past event now, right here in the present, using your imagination to vividly experience a different outcome or maybe just a different understanding of it, you can change its effect on your future. It's presented almost like unlocking doors that past limitations or beliefs have seemingly closed off for you.
No, you're not changing the facts, but the impact.
Well, some interpretations go even further. They suggest that changing your inner concept of the past can potentially change the past itself, at least as you subjectively experience and remember it, which, if consciousness is reality, is what really matters.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, and maybe a bit challenging to, fully accept. So imagination isn't just passive mental stuff, it's the fundamental force shaping reality. And we can literally alter the impact, or maybe even the memory, of the past by changing our imagination and perception now.
That's the radical implication, yes. It places incredible power and responsibility in your present internal state to redefine both past and future.
Okay, so taking that creative imagination one step further, What happens when we move from just imagining something to fully assuming it's already true, like really believing it?
Right. Assumptions are presented as the critical bridge between that inner world of imagination and, well, solid physical reality. The teaching is pretty direct. Dare to believe in the reality of your assumption. Really feel it's true. And the world, the external world, must conform to fulfill it. This is, you could say, a simplified definition of what many call the law of attraction, but with a really crucial emphasis on the internal state of acceptance.
Acceptance that it's already done.
Yes. By repeatedly assuming and crucially feeling that your assumptions are true, holding on to that inner conviction, they eventually harden into facts. That internal feeling, that conviction of already having or being what you desire.
Yeah.
When you persist in it, that's what causes it to eventually materialize outwardly. The key word is persistence. Keeping the assumption dominant in your thoughts and, importantly, your emotions until it just feels completely natural. Like, of course it's true.
And this connects directly to that concept you hear about living in the end, right?
Exactly. It's the same mechanism. If you desire something, you are inherently in a state of not having it. You're conscious of its lack. Living in the end means completely shifting your state of being, your inner world, to one where your wish is already fulfilled. You immerse yourself in the feeling, the knowledge, the assumption that it's done. It's already real now in consciousness. And you persist in that feeling of the wish being fulfilled, that persistent state, built on the assumption that it is already real. That's what causes it to manifest. It really underscores that the power isn't just in the intellectual thought or the assumption alone, but in fully embodying the state of the desired reality.
Okay, so we've got consciousness as the foundation, imagination as the creative tool, and assumption, especially persistent assumption, as the mechanism to bring it into being. But if imagination and assumption are so powerful, what's the fuel? What makes them actually work? Is there like a secret ingredient?
There is, yeah, and it's often highlighted as the most critical element. Feeling, emotion. Feeling is described as the only language, the only medium through which ideas reach and impress the subconscious mind.
The subconscious.
Yes. The conscious mind can think, it can intellectualize, it can assume all day long, but without the accompanying feeling, it lacks the power to really reach that deeper level of yourself. And that subconscious level is seen as the real engine of manifestation. Doubts or fears, which are essentially negative feelings, they directly oppose your desired assumption, and they hinder its manifestation. They impress the subconscious with lack.
So it's really not enough to just think, I am wealthy, or assume I have this job. I have to genuinely feel wealthy, feel like I have it.
Precisely. If you don't manage or direct your feelings, you risk impressing the subconscious with undesirable feelings of lack, limitation, fear. And it's the thoughts and beliefs, the feelings lodged in your subconscious that ultimately drive your behavior, your decisions, your personality, and crucially, the experiences that show up in your life. To manifest desires effectively, the idea absolutely must reach the subconscious. And feelings, emotions, that's the pathway. That's how you bypass the conscious gatekeepers, so to speak. Assumptions must be felt as true and real. An assumption without that corresponding feeling and emotion is described as basically ineffective, like seeds scattered on barren ground.
Okay, but how do you generate that feeling authentically, especially if your current reality seems totally opposite?
That's a great question. The technique often described involves creating a short, vivid imaginary scene. A scene that implies your wish is fulfilled, something you would naturally do or experience if your desire was already a physical reality. Like shaking someone's hand in congratulations, or feeling the steering wheel of your new car, or seeing a specific number in your bank account. Then you immerse yourself in that scene in your imagination. You loop it. Focus on the sensory details, but crucially focus on the feeling it evokes. The feeling of accomplishment, relief, joy, security, whatever fits. You repeat this scene, focusing entirely on the feeling until it feels completely natural and real to you, inside. When the subconscious accepts that feeling and seen as reality, the outer world, which is seen as a mirror, must eventually conform to match that inner state. It's about embodying the state of the wish fulfilled.
So it's not just thinking about the desire or even just assuming it intellectually.
Yeah.
It's stepping into and embodying the feeling of the wish already fulfilled in imagination. Wow, that adds such a profound layer of depth and, well, personal engagement to the whole process.
It really does. It connects the mental act to the physical outcome through that bridge of emotional state. Feeling is the secret, as they say.
All right, let's try and synthesize where this is taking us. We've got consciousness as the source, imagination is the creative force, assumptions hardening into facts, and feeling. being the key, the secret ingredient to impress the subconscious. Where does that leave me in this whole picture? What's my actual role?
This leads to perhaps the most empowering and maybe for some the most challenging principle of all. You are the operant power.
What exactly does that mean, opera?
It means you are the one operating your reality. You're the power that makes things happen in your world. Since according to these principles, you are the source of everything you experience, and consciousness is the only reality. Things appear to you precisely according to your state of consciousness, your assumptions, and your imaginations. How other people show up in your life, their behavior towards you, the opportunities or challenges that arise, they are all determined by your inner state, your concepts. You are presented as the sole creator of your specific reality, your personal universe. Nothing can happen in your experience if you are not, in some way, conscious of it, or if it doesn't somehow stem from your imaginative state.
Wow. That implies a tremendous amount of personal responsibility, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Everything I see, everyone I interact with, is somehow a result of me, my inner state.
Right. That is the core of the teaching, yes. And the call to action that comes with it is really potent. Dare to assume you are what you want to be. Fully occupy that state in imagination and feeling, and then remain faithful to that assumption. Persist in it. It's stated very clearly that if you do this, it must come to pass in your experience. But a lack of faithfulness to the assumption, slipping back into the old state of lack or doubt, means it won't happen for you, or it will be delayed.
Okay, but if I'm the only operant power, if my consciousness is the only reality, and everything else depends on me, what about everyone else?
Yeah.
And everything else in the world, or are they just like figments, parts of my consciousness?
This definitely builds on the previous points and introduces a concept that can be difficult for many to fully wrap their heads around. It's the idea that from the perspective of your own consciousness, you are the only God. You are everything. There is presented as no universe truly separate or independent from you. Everything else is described as an illusion, but not in the sense of being fake or unreal. More in the sense that its appearance to you is entirely contingent upon your consciousness and your imagination. Events, objects, other people, their existence, and how they appear in your world depend entirely on your inner state. If you aren't conscious of something, for all intents and purposes, it doesn't exist in your reality. And this is why perception is highlighted as being so subjective. The same person can be seen as wonderful by one person and absolutely terrible by another. The teaching is that there's nothing inherently good or bad out there in the world itself. It depends entirely on us, the perceivers. We are the ones who define situations, who decide how we perceive and react to what happens. The difference is you observing people, their actions, opinions, appearances, are presented as stemming from different mindsets and perceptions, which ultimately trace back to their own state of consciousness and imagination, which, from this ultimate perspective, is not truly separate from yours. It's all one consciousness expressing differently.
So, okay, if I'm the source and everyone else appears based on my consciousness, how does that explain my interactions with others? It sounds potentially very isolating, almost like they aren't real people with their own agency.
That's where the principle everyone is you pushed out comes in. It's crucial. It connects that idea of your singular reality to human interaction, but it emphasizes a fundamental oneness, not separation. There's a powerful quote that sort of articulates this. Something like, "Every man in the world is rooted in you who looks out and sees that world. He ends in me as I am rooted in and end in God." The concept is that because others are, in a sense, rooted in you, not physically, but in consciousness, the underlying reality, they cannot express a nature towards you or behave towards you in a way that the root, which is your consciousness, your assumptions about them, your state does not allow.
So they reflect back to me what I hold within.
Essentially, yes. The outer world, including how others behave towards you, is presented as a direct mirror, a reflection of your thoughts, your assumptions, and your feelings about them, and about yourself in relation to them. So if you change your internal concept of a person, perhaps see them differently in your imagination, feel differently about them, their behavior towards you is said to change accordingly. You aren't seen as separate from anything. Your inner state affects how others manifest in your reality. And of course, what you experience through others contributes to shaping your own state. It's a feedback loop. It's a view where everything you encounter is deeply interconnected and fundamentally reflects the state of the perceiver, which is you.
Wow. That's a profound shift in how we typically think about relationships and conflict, isn't it? So if everyone is, in a sense, a reflection of me and my consciousness is the primary reality, where does any change actually happen? Do I try to fix them or the situation out there?
Well, according to these principles, the only place real and lasting change can ever occur is within yourself. Since your imagination creates your reality and your perception determines everything that shows up for you. If you want to change any external circumstance, any interaction, any event, you must change your inner state first. You have to change your concept of yourself, your assumptions, your dominant feelings. Different internal states must lead to things appearing differently in your world.
So you change the inner blueprint.
Exactly. There's a key quote that really sums this up. There is no one to change but oneself. That self is simply your awareness, your consciousness, and the world in which it lives is determined by the concept you hold of oneself. See how it continuously circles back? Consciousness is the only reality. It's the source from which all your experiences arise. Even how others present themselves to you is said to depend on your concept of them, which ultimately stems from your concept of yourself. So a true transformation, like a rebirth into a new set of reactions and experiences in life, requires a fundamental change of consciousness, a spiritual shift within. Your world and the people in it are ultimately a direct reflection of you. Therefore, to create different occurrences, different interactions, you must begin by changing your concept of yourself, your inner state.
So it all starts and ends with self. Change the internal state, and the external reflection just has to change to match it.
That is the absolute central message, and the path to conscious creation presented in these teachings, yes.
What an incredible journey we've taken just now. Wow. We've explored this really radical idea that consciousness isn't just in reality, but is the only reality. That imagination is the actual creative power. That our assumptions, especially when steeped in feeling, literally harden into facts.
Yeah.
That feeling is the essential bridge, the secret to impressing the subconscious. That you, the listener, you are the operant power shaping your unique experience. This concept of oneness where everyone you encounter reflects your inner state, and consequently that all meaningful change happens within yourself first.
These principles really do weave together a comprehensive framework, a worldview.
Yeah.
Where your inner state, your awareness, imagination, assumptions, and feelings isn't merely influential, but is the primary active driver of your entire experience of the world you inhabit. It's quite profound when you really sit with it.
It really is. And it leaves us with a powerful thought to consider, doesn't it? If your consciousness and your imagination truly are the foundational forces shaping everything you experience, including how other people appear to you, the events in your life, the circumstances, that what seemingly fixed part of your reality, something you thought was just the way it is, could you perhaps begin to explore changing just by shifting your internal state and daring to assume and feel a new reality for yourself and your world? Something to think about.